You thought you found love, but he only wanted what came with you. You really thought this was it, didn't you? Like out of all the chaos and all the heartbreaks and all the nights you spent questioning your worth, this time someone finally chose you the right way. You felt like he came into your life for a reason, like maybe all the pain before him was just preparing you for something real, something that would not leave you confused, something that would not make you feel like you are too much or not enough at the same time. And you didn't just like him, you saw something in him, something safe, something honest, something that felt like home in a world that never really felt like yours. You trusted the way he spoke, the way he understood things you never even explained, the way he made you believe that maybe you don't have to fight for love this time. And slowly, without even realizing it, you started giving him pieces of yourself, your time, your energy, your softness, your patience, your loyalty, things you don't just give to anyone because you thought he was different, because you thought he saw you in a way no one ever did before. But what you didn't see, what you couldn't see, was that he wasn't falling in love with you, he was falling in love with what came with you. The way you cared without limits, the way you stayed even when things felt off, the way you forgave things you should have questioned, the way you made excuses for him even when your heart quietly knew something wasn't right. He liked the comfort, he liked the attention. He liked the way you made him feel important, wanted, needed, valued, but he never really stopped to understand you. He never really tried to hold your pain the same way you held his. And that is the truth that hurts the most, because to you he wasn't just someone, he was someone you were ready to choose again and again, someone you were ready to stay for, someone you were ready to grow with. But to him you were comfort, you were convenience. You were someone who made things easier, not someone he was willing to fight for, and you stayed even when things started feeling off, even when your heart whispered that something wasn't right. You ignored it because you didn't want to lose what you thought was love. You kept choosing him even when he stopped choosing you the same way. You kept showing up even when he became distant. You kept giving even when he stopped appreciating. And one day it hit you, not all at once but slowly, in the silence. In the way he stopped noticing you, in the way your absence didn't shake him. In the way your presence became something he expected instead of valued. That is when it broke you, because you realized you weren't loved, you were just available. And there is a difference, a painful one. You thought you found someone who saw you, but he only saw what you could do for him. And the hardest part is not losing him, it is losing the version of yourself that believed he was real. The version of you that loved without fear, that trusted without hesitation, that gave without holding back. And now you sit there trying to understand how something that felt so real turned out to be something so one-sided. You replay everything in your mind, every conversation, every moment, every feeling, trying to find where it all changed. But the truth is, it didn't change, you just started seeing it clearly. You just started feeling the imbalance you were ignoring before. And that realization hurts more than anything, because it means you were giving your everything to someone who was only giving you just enough to stay, just enough to keep you there, just enough to make sure you didn't walk away. And that kind of love is not love, it is attachment, it is habit, it is comfort for one person and confusion for the other. And you were the one feeling everything deeply while he was just there enjoying what you were giving. And now you are left picking up the pieces of yourself, trying to understand your own worth again, trying to remind yourself that you were never too much, you were just too real for someone who was never real with you. And slowly you will learn, slowly you will understand that you did not lose something real, you just lost an illusion that felt real. And one day you will stop blaming yourself, you will stop wondering what you could have done differently, because deep down you will know that you gave everything you could, and the right person would have never made you feel like it still wasn't enough. And even after all this, your heart still searches for answers, it still looks for a reason that makes it make sense, because accepting that someone just took your love without ever planning to give the same back feels too heavy, it feels unfair, it feels like something inside you was ignored, and you keep going back to the memories not because they were perfect but because they felt real to you, because you were real in those moments, because every word you said, every emotion you showed, every effort you made came from a place that never knew how to be fake, and that is why it is so hard to let go, not because of who they were but because of who you were with them, because you liked that version of yourself, the one who could love without fear, the one who could trust without holding back, the one who believed that this time things would be different, and now it feels like that version of you is lost somewhere in all this pain. Like you don't even recognize yourself the same way anymore, like something inside you became quieter, more careful, more distant, and you start building walls not because you want to but because you feel like you have to, because you don't want to go through the same hurt again, you don't want to give so much of yourself only to feel empty in the end, and slowly you begin to question everything, you question your choices, your feelings, your ability to understand people. You wonder if you missed the signs, if you ignored the truth, if you stayed longer than you should have, and maybe you did, but that does not make you weak, it just means you loved deeply, it just means you believed in something that felt real to you. And there is nothing wrong with that, the only mistake was giving your everything to someone who was never ready to hold it, and that is something you learn with time, not in one moment, not in one realization, but slowly through every sleepless night, through every quiet breakdown, through every time you sit alone thinking about what it all meant, and little by little you start understanding that closure does not always come from the other person. Sometimes it comes from accepting that they were never who you thought they were, that their actions already gave you the answer you kept waiting to hear in words, and once you start accepting that, something shifts inside you, something starts to settle, not completely but enough to help you breathe again, enough to help you take a step forward instead of staying stuck in the same place, and you begin to see things differently, you begin to realize that love should not feel like confusion, it should not feel like you are constantly questioning where you stand, it should not feel like you are the only one trying, the only one caring, the only one holding everything together. Real love feels steady, it feels safe, it feels mutual, and what you had was not that, it only felt like that in the beginning because you gave it that meaning, because you filled the gaps with your own hope, and that is something you slowly forgive yourself for. Because you did not know better at that time, you were just following your heart, and even though it led you here, it also taught you something important. It taught you to see the difference between attention and intention, between words and actions, between someone who is just there and someone who truly stays, and that lesson stays with you. It changes the way you see people, the way you protect your energy, the way you choose who deserves your time, and even though it makes you more guarded, it also makes you stronger. It makes you someone who will not settle for less again, someone who will not ignore the signs again, someone who will walk away the moment they feel like they are not being valued the way they should be, and that is growth, even if it came from pain, even if it came from something you wish never happened. It still shaped you into someone wiser, someone more aware, someone who understands their own worth a little more than before, and one day you will reach a point where this does not hurt the same way, where the memories do not feel heavy, where the questions do not keep you up at night, where you no longer feel the need to understand why it happened, because you will already know that not everything is meant to make sense. Some things are just meant to teach you, and once the lesson is learned, the pain slowly loses its power, and you start focusing on yourself again, on your life, on your peace, on the things that truly matter, and you realize that you were always enough, that you were never the problem, that the love you gave was real and rare and valuable. It was just given to someone who did not know how to handle it, and that does not reduce its worth, it only proves how genuine you are. And one day when someone comes into your life who truly understands that, who truly values that, who truly chooses you without making you question it, you will look back at this and feel nothing but clarity, because you will finally understand that what you thought was love before was just a lesson preparing you for something real. Something that does not leave you broken, something that does not leave you confused, something that stays. And when that happens, you will not have to overthink, you will not have to doubt, you will not have to fight for basic effort, because real love does not feel like something you have to earn, it feels like something that flows naturally, something that meets you halfway, something that makes you feel secure instead of unsure. And until that day comes, you learn to become that for yourself. To give yourself the same care, the same patience, the same understanding you were always ready to give to someone else, and that is where your healing truly begins, not when they come back, not when they apologize, but when you finally stop waiting for them to become who you needed and start accepting that they never will, and in that acceptance you find your freedom, you find your strength, and most importantly you find yourself again. And somewhere in between all of this, between the memories and the silence and the slow healing, you start noticing something you didn't before. You start noticing how much of yourself you had abandoned just to keep them in your life, how many times you ignored your own feelings just to understand theirs, how many times you stayed quiet just to avoid losing them, and that realization hits differently because it's no longer about what they did. It's about what you allowed. It's about how you slowly placed them above yourself without even realizing it. And that truth is heavy, but it's also important, because it teaches you that love should never come at the cost of losing yourself. It should never require you to shrink, to stay silent, to accept less than what you deserve. And once you understand that, something inside you begins to change, not loudly, not suddenly, but quietly, deeply, in a way that makes you more aware of your own needs, your own boundaries, your own worth. And you start rebuilding yourself piece by piece, not into the person you were before them, but into someone stronger, someone who has seen what it feels like to give everything and get almost nothing in return, and still chooses to rise again. And it's not easy. There are days when everything feels fine and then suddenly something reminds you of them and it all comes rushing back. The feelings, the memories, the questions, the pain, and you feel like you're back at the beginning, but you're not. You're just processing, you're just healing in layers, and every time you come back from that wave a little stronger than before, a little more detached than before, a little more accepting than before, and slowly those waves stop hitting as hard, they stop lasting as long, and you begin to breathe again without that constant weight on your chest, and you begin to see your life beyond them, beyond what happened, beyond what you lost, and you realize that there is so much more waiting for you, so much more than a love that made you question yourself, so much more than a connection that only existed because you kept holding it together, and that realization gives you a different kind of strength, a quiet confidence, a sense of peace that doesn't depend on anyone else, and for the first time in a long time you start choosing yourself without guilt, you start saying no to things that don't feel right, you start walking away from situations that don't respect your value. And it feels strange at first because you're not used to putting yourself first, but it also feels right in a way you can't explain, and that is when you know you're healing, not because the pain is completely gone, but because it no longer controls you, it no longer defines you. And you begin to understand that what you went through was not a failure, it was a lesson, a hard one, a painful one, but a necessary one, because it showed you what love is not. it showed you what you should never accept again, it showed you the difference between being wanted and being valued, and once you see that you can never unsee it, you can never go back to accepting half efforts and empty words, and that changes everything. It changes the way you see people, the way you trust, the way you love, but most importantly it changes the way you see yourself, because now you know your worth is not defined by how someone treats you, it's defined by how you choose to treat yourself, and that is a power no one can take away from you. And one day, when you are no longer looking for answers, when you are no longer holding on to the past, when you are finally at peace with what happened, someone will come into your life who does not confuse you, who does not make you question your place, who does not make you feel like you have to earn their love, and it will feel different, not intense and overwhelming, but calm and steady, not full of doubts but full of clarity, and you will realize that this is what you were always looking for, this is what you deserved all along, and in that moment you will not feel angry about what you went through, you will not feel regret, you will just feel grateful that you didn't settle, that you didn't stay where you were not valued, that you chose to walk away even when it was hard, because if you hadn't, you would have never found something real, something genuine, something that sees you for who you are and stays not because of what you give but because of who you are, and that is when everything finally makes sense, not because you got closure from them, but because you found closure within yourself, and that is the kind of healing that truly lasts. And after all of this, after all the overthinking and all the nights that felt heavier than they should have, after all the moments where you felt like you were losing yourself just trying to understand something that was never clear, you finally reach a point where you get tired, not just of missing them but of missing someone who never truly held you the way you deserved, and that kind of tired is different, it's not loud, it's not emotional, it's quiet, it's the kind that makes you sit with yourself and finally say enough. Enough of chasing answers that never come, enough of replaying memories that only hurt, enough of hoping that one day they will become who you needed them to be, because deep down you already know the truth, you already know that if they wanted to they would have, if they cared enough they would have shown it, if you really mattered to them they would not have made you feel so replaceable, so uncertain, so easy to lose. And accepting that truth does not break you the way you thought it would, it actually frees you. It takes away that constant weight of expectation, that silent hope that kept you stuck, and once that is gone you start to see everything differently, you stop romanticizing the past, you stop ignoring the things that hurt you, you stop blaming yourself for things that were never your fault. And for the first time you start being honest with yourself about what you went through, about how much you gave, about how little you received in return. And that honesty becomes the beginning of your healing, because now you are no longer lying to yourself just to protect an image of someone who never really existed the way you believed, and it's not that you stop caring completely, it's that the care changes, it becomes distant, it becomes quiet, it no longer controls your thoughts or your emotions the same way, and you start focusing on yourself again, on your own life, your own growth, your own peace. And slowly you begin to rebuild everything that felt broken inside you, not in a rushed way, not trying to replace what you lost, but in a way that feels real and lasting, and you start doing things for yourself again. Small things at first, things that make you feel like you again, things that remind you that your life is bigger than one person, bigger than one experience, bigger than one chapter that didn't turn out the way you hoped, and as you keep moving forward you begin to understand that closure was never something they could give you. It was something you had to create on your own, by accepting what happened, by letting go of what could have been, by choosing not to carry something that was never meant to stay, and that choice is not easy, it takes time, it takes strength, it takes moments of doubt and moments of clarity, but every time you choose yourself you get a little closer to peace, a little closer to the version of yourself that is no longer defined by what they did or didn't do, and that version of you is stronger. Not because they hurt you, but because you survived it, because you learned from it, because you refused to let it turn you into someone bitter or closed off. Instead you became more aware, more selective, more respectful of your own worth, and that is something that changes your entire life, because now you know what you bring to the table, you know how deeply you can love, how genuinely you can care, and you also know that not everyone deserves that, not everyone is capable of holding that. And that realization protects you, it helps you choose better, it helps you walk away sooner, it helps you recognize when something is not right without having to go through the same pain again, and one day, when you least expect it, you will find yourself in a place where you no longer think about them the same way, where their name does not carry the same weight, where their absence does not feel like a loss but like a lesson that has already served its purpose, and you will smile, not because everything was perfect, but because you made it through, because you didn't let that experience define your future, because you kept going even when it felt impossible. And in that moment you will realize that you didn't lose anything that was meant for you, you only let go of something that was never truly yours, and that kind of realization brings a peace that no explanation ever could, a quiet understanding that everything happened the way it did so you could become who you are now, someone who no longer settles for confusion, someone who no longer chases half-love, someone who knows that real love will never make you question your place, and until that love comes you are no longer waiting, you are living, you are growing, you are becoming everything you needed when you were at your lowest, and that is the most powerful thing of all, because in the end you didn't just heal, you found yourself in a way you never had before, and somewhere along this journey, without even realizing it, you begin to outgrow the version of you that once begged for clarity from someone who only gave confusion. You begin to detach not because you stopped caring completely but because you finally understood that caring alone is not enough to keep something real alive, and that realization settles in slowly, it does not come all at once, it comes in moments, in small shifts, in the way you stop checking your phone as much, in the way their name does not trigger the same feeling anymore, in the way you start choosing peace over overthinking, and at first it feels unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, because you got so used to the chaos that calm feels strange, but then you start to appreciate it, you start to realize that love was never supposed to feel like a constant question, it was never supposed to make you doubt your worth or your place in someone's life. And the more you accept that, the more you let go of the idea that what you had was something you needed to hold on to, because now you see it clearly, you see that it was something you carried alone for too long, something you kept alive with your effort while the other person simply existed within it, and that understanding gives you a different kind of strength, one that is quiet but powerful, one that allows you to walk away without needing an explanation, without needing closure from someone who never truly gave you clarity in the first place, and as you continue moving forward you start to reconnect with yourself in ways you forgot. You start to remember what makes you happy outside of someone else's presence, you start to rebuild your confidence not based on how someone treats you but on how you treat yourself, and that shift changes everything. Because now you are no longer looking for validation in the wrong places, you are no longer trying to prove your worth to someone who never recognized it, instead you are standing in your own value, in your own truth, and that makes you unshakable in a way you never were before, and yes, there are still moments when the past crosses your mind, when you wonder how things could have been different, but those thoughts no longer control you. They pass, they fade, they lose their weight, because you have learned something far more important than holding on to memories. You have learned how to let go, not in a forced way, not in a way that denies what you felt, but in a way that accepts it and still chooses to move forward, and that is growth, real growth, the kind that comes from pain but does not keep you stuck in it, and one day you will look at love differently, not as something you have to chase or fight for, but as something that should meet you halfway, something that should feel natural, consistent, secure, and when that kind of love enters your life you will recognize it instantly, not because it feels intense or overwhelming, but because it feels calm, it feels certain, it feels like you don't have to question it every second, and that is when you will truly understand the difference between what you had and what you deserve. And instead of feeling regret for the past you will feel gratitude, gratitude that you didn't stay where you were not valued, gratitude that you learned the lessons you needed to learn, gratitude that you chose yourself even when it was the hardest thing to do, and in that space of clarity you will realize that everything you went through was not there to break you, it was there to prepare you, to shape you into someone who knows their worth, who respects their own heart, who understands that love is not about losing yourself to keep someone else, it is about finding someone who adds to your life without taking away from who you are, and until that person comes you are no longer waiting in pain, you are living in peace, growing into someone who does not need validation from anyone else, someone who is already complete on their own, and that is when everything changes. Because when you stop searching for someone to fill the emptiness you once felt, you realize there is no emptiness anymore, there is just you, whole, strong, and finally at peace with everything you had to go through to get here, and by the time you reach this point you finally understand something that once felt impossible to accept, you understand that closure was never about them coming back and explaining everything. It was never about hearing the perfect words or getting the apology you once thought you needed, it was always about you reaching a place where you no longer needed anything from them to feel at peace, and that shift changes everything inside you. Because now your healing is no longer dependent on someone who never knew how to handle your heart, now it belongs to you, fully and completely, and there is a quiet power in that, a kind of strength that does not need to be shown or proven, it just exists within you, steady and real, and as you sit with yourself you begin to see everything clearly, not through emotions, not through memories, not through the version of them you created in your mind, but through truth, and that truth no longer hurts the same way because you have already faced it, you have already cried over it, you have already questioned it 1,000 times, and now all that is left is acceptance, a deep calm acceptance that what happened was not meant to stay, it was meant to teach, and you finally stop asking why it ended and start understanding why it could never last, and that realization frees you in a way nothing else ever could, because now you are not holding on to something that was never fully yours, you are not waiting for someone who never truly chose you. You are not carrying the weight of a connection that only existed because you kept it alive on your own, instead you are letting it rest, letting it fade into something that no longer controls your present, and for the first time in a long time you feel light, not because everything is perfect but because you are no longer attached to what once made you feel heavy. And in that lightness you start to see yourself again. Not the version of you that was hurting, not the version of you that was confused, but the real you, the one who is still capable of love, still capable of trust, still capable of feeling deeply without losing yourself in the process, and that is when you realize that nothing they did was able to take that away from you. It may have shaken you, it may have hurt you, it may have changed you in some ways, but it did not destroy the core of who you are, and that is something to be proud of, because not everyone comes out of something like this still able to believe in love, still able to open their heart again, and you do, not immediately, not easily, but eventually, and when you do it will be different, it will be wiser, it will be stronger, it will be rooted in self-respect instead of fear of losing someone, and you will no longer accept half-love, you will no longer stay in places where you feel uncertain, you will no longer silence your needs just to keep someone around. Because now you know better, now you understand that the right person will never make you feel like you have to earn their presence. They will choose you clearly, consistently, and without hesitation, and that kind of love will not confuse you, it will not hurt you, it will not make you question yourself, it will feel like peace, like something that fits naturally into your life without forcing you to change who you are. And when that happens, you will look back at everything you went through and it will finally make sense. Not in a painful way but in a peaceful one, because you will see that every moment of confusion, every moment of hurt, every moment where you felt like you were losing yourself was actually leading you here, to this version of you that knows their worth, that respects their own heart, that understands that love is not about holding on to someone who does not choose you. It is about choosing yourself until the right person comes along and chooses you just as deeply. And in that understanding you find your closure, not in their words, not in their actions, but in your own growth, in your own healing, in your own decision to move forward without looking back. And that is where your story truly changes, not when they left, not when it ended, but when you finally decided that you deserve more than what they were ever able to give, and you meant it.